Welcome back. This is the fourth part of the Let's Build for Ruby or Rails developers. And this part's going to focus on getting the data structure intact. In a previous video, I think video 2, we talked about the data modeling layer. So like the user model and the job model, and then getting into the community side of it is we're going to actually leverage a gem called Simple Discussion for that. This video, I just kind of want to set up the model structure and sort of get that going. I think the main focus will be, of course, the user model and then, of course, the job model. I do want to add categories to jobs just to be able to filter those and display those in such a way on the site that makes sense to people maybe coming to the site. They want to only see a certain category of a job. I'm not sure about that, though, since it's really tied to Ruby and Rails developers. Maybe we just have two. So maybe it's as simple as a boolean. I'm not sure, but I kind of want to keep it open-ended. So maybe it's JavaScript, maybe it's Ruby, maybe it's Rails in particular people are looking for. Who knows? What I'm going to do, I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants. I have the latest master on my local machine. There is going to be a link to a GitHub repo that you can check out. I have mentioned this in a few blog posts, but what I'll say on the video is that I'm going to do Git versioning by branch. So each screencast or video you're seeing should have associated part as a new branch. So as you go through, be sure to either check out that branch or, just compare your notes with that, as opposed to using the master branch. The master will be the main source of truth. It'll always be up to date with probably the latest code that I'm working on at any given moment. I'm doing this part by part, so it won't be anything that's complete. So the master branch at this point in time will not have the final working site by any means. I've done that in the past on my videos where I publish the whole series, which usually makes sense because I've kind of practiced it and done things. But in this case, I'm building it all kind of in real time. So I just want to almost document it as a vlog / screencast blog of this build. So hopefully you enjoy it. Anyway. What I want to do right now is I have, like I said, the latest working branch in the app. I've updated the README to kind of give some background if you checked out the repo yet or will. But other than that, this is a fresh Rails app. I've used my template, Kickoff Tailwind, to kind of scaffold this. But otherwise, besides the gems we installed in the last video and the configuration we set up, this is fresh. So what I want to first do is generate a few models that we'll actually use, or actually just one to start with, the job model, and then do some groundwork on the user model to kind of change it to get it to where we can use it. So the user model already has some decent structure to it. In fact, I have the annotate gem set up, so we should be able to see some comments in here. Most of this is partially from Devise. A lot of it's or a few are custom. So admin's custom, we added that during the template creation. Default's false there. First and last name are part of that name of person gem we added. That's going to be what I'm using to just grab associated names of users and just kind of display those in any which way I'd prefer. And the moderator is part of that simple discussion gem. That's just something we can add and either set to true or false if we need to on a community side. We'll get into the community stuff later. I think the goal with this is to get an MVP of the job and listings and posting up somewhere. And once that's in place, I can start to think about how to make this more appealing to developers who want to come and kind of chat or talk about developer things. So the user model at this point has this one boolean for moderator and admin. I actually want to add one for both developer or employer. And those can both be true and they can both be false, or one could be the other. So I wanted to be able to kind of tie that in and do some methods on the model layer and or controller layer to kind of, the view layer too, to kind of display certain UI relative to those things. So if an employer comes to the site, they might want to post a job instead of, do other things that a developer might want to do. So One model there I'm forgetting at this point will be some sort of subscription model. So I'm wanting to add a form for each category of job, or just the jobs feed itself, that will return results in your email. So any public user, you don't have to be a user on the site, can subscribe to this form, get notified via email, like as the job board updates or other things happen on the site. And we can do all that coming up. I haven't honestly scoped out what that's going to look like yet, but I know it's kind of you select a few attributes that you want to receive. Maybe it's at first the MVP version is just receive all the job posts for the week or something. And then we can kick that off in like a background job that sends an email every week with the list of jobs that were generated that week. So this gets confusing as hell. So it's okay if you're not following along, but I'm just trying to speak my mind at this point just to kind of make sense of things myself. So if I sound like I'm spinning in my tracks, I'm sorry. It's just how I kind of go through things when I start to figure them out. So let's generate, what should we do first? The model of the job? Sure. Well, first, let's check out a new branch. So Rails, I'm going to do, not Rails, check out new branch will be, we're on part 3 was the last part 4. So then we'll be on that branch. So now any work on this will be pushed to part 4. Once that's finalized, I will merge it into master. So assume part 4 is this point in history once we're done with this video. Even if it's not complete, I'm still going to do it that way just so it makes sense per video so you can follow along. So I'm going to generate a job with a few attributes and then we'll take it from there. So we'll say Rails generate. I'm going to do scaffold just to start, honestly, MVP, come on. I'm a solo developer. I'm going to build an entire app. I'm going to work fast. So we're going to do a title will be a string, link to apply, string. Description will be rich text. We might need to install action text and active storage still to do this. I'm not sure. We'll get an error back if that won't work. Company name, because rich text is action text, and action text depends on local storage or active storage. It also depends on the tricks JS library. So there's a lot there, but we'll get to it. Company name. And this is all likely to change. So there's been oftentimes in my past where I blew a database schema up just to rewrite it all because it wasn't up to spec, So don't feel like you have to get it right the first time. Company website will be a string. Most of this is going to be string. We'll leave company logo will be part of active storage. We don't need to actually address that here. It's going to be its own database table for local storage. So something to keep in mind. You could use another gem that uses like a string in the database, but that's not really necessary in our case because I'm going to use active storage. So company description. Description will be a rich text as well. And then role type. So this will either be, like developer, freelancer, or no, it should be like freelance, full-time, contract, something like that is what I'm thinking. Compensation range. So when I'm typing these out, typically you'd do this. You'd put colon string to signify it's a string type, but Rails, at least this generator, knows that if you don't have anything, it's string by default. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like for this one, we'll say, is it remote? And I'm actually going to make this a boolean. So that's usually going to mean, is it remote? And we'll say true or false. So that's how that works. And then years of experience. I kind of hate this metric of work, jobs, stuff like that, but sadly it's a thing people look for. So I'm going to keep it for now, but just know I don't like it. Okay, so with that, we've got everything except I should probably title what the hell the model is. So I think if I do Control A, it goes to the beginning, Control Scaffold, and we want to call this job. That's going to be the model and the database table. And these are all columns on the table. So the title will be the column, and it'll be a string. Link to apply will be a string. Rich text, like I said, is part of action text. It's just another library we're going to use to basically have a WYSIWYG in the view. Since we're going to leverage Vue.js, we probably use a Vue version of it, but it'll still stand true of that content we generate. It's going to be pushed back to the API that we're going to have for Rails to save as rich text. So just assume it's good. Company name, company website, description is rich text, role type is string, compensation range is string, remote or not is boolean, and years of experience is string. So I'm going to assume this is good to go. It looks like my spelling's correct. I'm going to just run this, and we'll see if we get any errors thanks to that action text dependency. We might need to install that afterwards. Okay. So everything worked. You saw here, this generates everything under the sun, which is good and bad. It does a lot for us, which it adds unit tests, routing, controller level stuff, and then all of our views and JSON responses if we want it. We're actually going to use JSON response mostly on this. So the views itself we won't really need, but I'm going to keep them for now just for demonstration purposes. And I'm going to kill these style sheets in particular. So I'm going to just do that little bit of housekeeping quick in my app. So assets, style sheets, we'll just delete this one. We got a helper out of it too, which is nice. We'll make use of that. And then thanks to the generation, we get these has rich text columns in our actual model, which is good. We should have probably done... Is a user going to post a job? We probably should have a user ID on that job. Yeah, I'm going to roll back. So you can do this in two ways. So Rails D or destroy scaffold job. Boom, goes and deletes everything. And I'm going to do this again. Just press up arrow on my keyboard. I'm going to do user references, and this will actually add a user ID attribute on the job. So when a user is signed in, they are the ones creating the job, and they'll be the one that owns it. Once they create it, they'll be the one to be able to edit. And then we can always say an admin can be able to edit it too if we want to later on with the boolean property in our database. So I'm going to roll with this and double check our model. Now it belongs to a user, which is good. So that's user references, essentially adds this, and then a user, we still need to add has many jobs here. So I think you can do dependent destroy. We'll find out. I'm going to roll with that. So if a user is deleted, all their jobs will be deleted as well, which makes sense. If you ban someone, you don't want their stuff hanging around. Okay, and then just to verify what happened, here's our migration that was created. We could update this to have, any which thing. We might set default to false here just to have a default. If I could spell. Just for a boolean property here. So even if the job's created, it will, have some sort of attribute that's just not nil. And I think that's good. On the database layer, you can add even validation down this level. I typically reach for the model layer for stuff like that just to keep it easy, but it's up to you if you want to go that crazy. Let's go delete those files again. I know there's a flag you can pass to not do style sheets. I just honestly forget what it was. The scaffolds one you can actually configure in your app to not do, but again, laziness. Cool. So I think that should work. Job belongs to user rich text. Okay. Let's go ahead and migrate. Cool. So jobs tables created. We annotated that as well. So in our actual app, we'll see that stuff scaffold itself. We've got an index on the user ID. Good deal. Now, one thing you need to do, pretty much, I think all actions on this controller are going to be, well, besides index and show, will be authenticated or require authentication. So we'll say before action, authenticate user with a bang, and we'll say accept instead of only index and show. So basically, if you're visiting all the job index, you can see it as a public resource. You can do what you want with it. If you were going to go to new or create a job or edit a job, you need to sign in first. And typically, you'll only see an edit link. It's, at least my mind, is when you're the author of that job, which I think we set that up as a helper. I could be wrong. Yeah, author of. So I'll make use of that coming up. Actually, I probably won't because it'll be a view app, but actually I might. We'll see. So I set this up essentially at this point. To create a job, you need to sign in. That's the gist. So we've migrated. We've got our user model set up. One thing I want to do just for grins is go ahead and install active storage. Let's go to Rails action text. I think there should be an install for this. Is this the Edge guide? I can't remember. Yeah. This will install storage first. So Rails action text install. So this depends on some node modules for action text, which is going to require tricks library and other, I think, Rails UI.js stuff. But primarily action text as a node module and tricks itself. So there we go. We got the migrations that were copied to the table. This is going to essentially say, I'm going to create a new table that's for active storage specifically. And then within that, we have these blobs and structures for attachments. That's going to make the stuff right here work. So rich text in particular. If we add an actual attachment in this case, which we actually need to add. So we need has one. Oh my gosh. Attached. And then we could say company logo. So that's essentially saying use active storage for this thing, and then it's just all set up and great. Now, when we go to production, we'll need to assign any upload at this point is being saved locally. So it'll be in this public folder when we do upload something. But under configuration, environments, or no, storage here, we'll need to set up like AWS, which I mentioned in the very beginning. I'm going to use the SDK from there to kind of hook into this. And what's great is this is already set up to do that. You just need to supply your bucket, region, and your access keys. So we'll get that set up. You can use other services too if you want, and even mirror services, which is freaking cool and probably smart. Okay, so our job seemingly is set up. We installed active storage. We need to do another migration to add active storage in its tables. Awesome. And then just for grins, I'm going to boot the server, head to localhost. All right, we have our app here. I'm just going to go to a little layout real quick. And in the header, I always do this header, instead of this link, let's just go to jobs for now. And we'll say jobs path. And this is all brought to us by the routing. So when we scaffolded, we go to our config routes file. This resources jobs was added automatically. And what that essentially says is give me the full RESTful routing for jobs itself. So we have a create, read, update, and destroy. So a CRUD method. And if you ever want to know visually what that looks like, if you go to localhost 3000 Rails info routes, you could see it. You could also say rake routes or Rails routes in your command line, and it'll display them out. This to me is easier to read, so I go here. But if you look closely, here's our jobs resource. So that one-liner does all of this for us, which is great. Cool. And you'll see your other stuff here from devise and everything else too. And then action mailbox if you want to make use of that. I haven't had a need to use that yet, but I'm excited to try it. So now if we reset this, we have a jobs link, and I'll just go to it. Here's the ugly ass experience of a scaffolded route, and you can hit a new job. Our authentication before action worked, so I'm actually going to go create a account. Just use my name, and I'll use WebCrunch password. Okay. Oh, I have confirmable enabled on our devise install. So if we go to user, just to double check and show you what I mean, we have confirmable enabled. So if you don't get an email locally, of course you won't, unless you have like mail, a local mail service set up. If you view your logs, you'll see a link here. This is the quickest and easiest way to just confirm. You can see that it actually was sent as well, which is cool. If you click this link, you'll be able to confirm it. Very good. If you go into jobs now, you can actually need to sign in first. There we go. So this, thanks to Tailwind, looks like nothing. And we have our trick stuff here, but it's not styled. So we need to actually import some stuff, I think, from that. To get it styled. I'll worry about the views coming up. For now, I just want to focus on kind of modeling. But we can see that this stuff is enabled. This is remote. It's disabled by default. It's a checkbox. Since it's a boolean, Rails assumes it's a checkbox. But we might make that some sort of switch or something. You never know. That makes it kind of fancy. Yeah, so we'll come back to this. Right now, we can essentially create a job. I won't go through this tedious process because it looks painful, but I just wanted to make sure we could boot up the app and it wasn't barking at us. Okay, I killed the server there. One detail I want to do that isn't done yet on the user model. If you look in our comments here, like I said, we have the admin and moderator boolean. I actually want to add two more. One's going to be developer, one's going to be employer. Both, I guess we could default to something, maybe false for both. And then those attributes need to be piped through to devise and permitted as parameters. So we'll actually extend, I think, the registration form to be either have a switch for developer or employer when you sign up, or both. And I'm not sure how that could work. Maybe checkboxes for those. And then you can go to town. So that's a simple MVP version. It could be fancier than that. So maybe we have two different auth flows or something later on that dictates that you're a developer instead of an employer. But for now, I think it's just easy to make it Boolean level stuff, just to kind of get a proof of concept going. So we need to create a migration at this point. So I'll say Rails generate migration. Actually, I'm going to do some Git. So we have a status here, a lot of files. So we'll say git add. We'll say add job resource and install active action text. We'll say that. Okay, now we'll say Rails generate migration. And what I want to do is just add fields, a couple fields to users table. So I'm just going to make it generic. So add Maybe we'll say personas to users, and then we'll say developer boolean, employer boolean. Like I said, this could be better done. We could have better roles and make it all extendable and stuff by an admin and whatever, but I don't really care. Just kind of making this simple as I can. So let's run this migration. It should, thanks to this naming convention to users, it should go ahead and assume it's on the users table, but we can verify that in our database schema migration. So we go to this file. There we go. Yeah, it assumed users since we used that. And then we just add these Boolean properties. I don't know if it makes sense to set some defaults here. Kind of want to not. I feel like false is the default. Maybe just because we did for admin, we'll do default false for both. I mean, I don't know what other user you would be, but I just like having defaults. It just makes me feel sane about that decision. So let's just run that migration now. And migrate it in. Our user model should update with the comments. Here we go. So now we have employer boolean default false and developer boolean default false. Okay. So now what I want to do is permit those parameters as valid things when a user comes to the site and signs up. So what I want to do is add developer employer it's not very dry. We could just say this. Maybe we just say keys. There we go. Since it's the same shit, it doesn't really matter here. So keys. All right, and that gets it close. What we want to do now is update our views to include those fields, and I think I'll just make them generic checkboxes for now. This was all done in the application controller, so it's all on the before action. For every request, essentially, we're doing this. Devise has this method called parameter sanitizer, and you can pass in what route it would end up being. So this, in this case, would be registration route. So when you create a new user or when you update an account. So we pass in these to whitelist those parameters. That's essentially the same. If you've done controllers in the past, it's the same as this stuff, but just within that gem. The gem is exposing it to us so we can customize it, which is great. So what I want to do now is go to the views real quick, and we'll go to devise, in particular registrations, edit. We have name, so we'll just do edit and new. So on this field, I don't know if I want you to be able to edit that you're a developer or an employer, actually. Yeah, I feel like that should just be on new. So I'm going to backtrack and just use keys for the sign up, and then we'll just use the generic name here. Cool. So when we update your account, you don't need to pass in whether you are a developer or employer, because I feel like that's just some admin level data we want to work with. So once that's set, well, maybe you want to be an employer later. So maybe I will do that. We'll leave it alone and allow you to edit for now. So we'll say input group. This is a class I've added to my template, and it essentially just adds some margin. I added it just because I wanted something that was easier to remember. We'll say label, let's say developer. Let's say use. Okay. We'll do the same as employer. And I might put this like lower so it's not like the first thing you touch. Currently confirm, password confirmation, current password. Let's put these below, right before the button, just because. Maybe we could add like personas or roles, something like that. If you're not used to Tailwind, I'm pretty much got it down now. Having used it a lot. If you don't know these, don't worry. But if you reference the Tailwind documentation, it's the best place to figure all these class names out. The more you use it, the more you're going to remember this stuff. Okay, I'm going to do the same for new. Below sign up. And real quick, I'm going to install an extension I added on my other system that is ERB pretty, what was it called? I'm going to look real quick on my other computer. ERB formatter. This one here. So one dependency of this one is you need to install an actual a gem called HTML beautifier. So you need to do this globally. So I'll do that real quick. I have it on my other computer, so beautifier, we'll find out. There we go. Once that installs, it parses your files and does like formatting on ERB files. So if you ever find yourself with this weird ass like indentation and then you need to fix it yourself, like in JavaScript land, that's like a no-brainer. You want that enabled, but this thing will do it for ERB, which is like almost unheard of. What I want to do though is add a couple settings to keep blank lines. So I'm going to go into my settings real quick. Extensions. You might not want to do that, but I do. So if I save this, see how that jumps back over? That's beautiful. I always had that grudge against ERB files, and it's just like, why can't this work here? It's not always accurate, but it's pretty damn close. All right, so with this done, I need to boot the server again. Okay. And we're going to go, just to verify everything's good, is go back here. We've got this checkbox now. If I update it, it's going to ask me for a password. Can they be saved? We'll find out. So if those are checked, it does save it. So good deal. Yep, okay. That looks like shit, but we'll get it in better shape coming up. I might just real quick swap the checkbox, the labels. And the same here. All right. So now at least it kind of looks like it should. Let's just assume I'm going to use it as a developer for now. Oh my gosh, I keep doing this. I might need to turn that crap off. Device has some way to do it. All right, we'll leave that alone. I already know I'm going to forget about that and it's going to bite me later, but it's okay. Let's update one real quick housekeeping thing. Actually, I already know it's in like this file is just to name this railsdevs.com. And I will include Stripe because we'll need that. So I'll just go ahead and git status, git add, git commit, update user model with developer and employer personas. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and push this. I'm going to call this video a good one. and done. And the next one, we'll kind of start configuring the views and getting those in good shape and start installing Vue.js. So I'll see you in that one next. Hello Rails is my new course on Ruby on Rails. I'll teach you Ruby on Rails from the ground up. Visit hellorails.io for more information.